Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode number 428. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black Entrepreneur Experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. Are you ready to live and lead on your own terms? Our next guest is founder and chief wellness officer of Be Well Beautiful Women. Welcome, Demarra West.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richards. It is nice to be back in the studio with you. Always a pleasure to spend time and looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you shared back. And so we want to hear everything that is going on. I've given our audience such a brief bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps? Share with our audience what you want them to know about you and your business, and even the pivot.
Yeah, absolutely. So Be Well Beautiful Woman is a global wellness community that I started about 4 years ago after pivoting. I initially was Black Women About Business and realized about a year after my launch with that, and had a lot of success in that space, from getting named, top podcast for Black women by Black Enterprise and Essence magazine. And I let it all go because I had some realizations about, wellness really being at the forefront for me, wanting to continue to center Black women in my work and women of color and low-income women in my work as well. But I also wanted to serve all women. When I thought about, my own multiracial makeup, and I identify as a multiracial Black woman, and also the women that have impacted my life and who exist in my world, who are my friends, who are my colleagues, who are my confidants. These are women that they look like all different kinds of people, different identities, different lived experiences. And I really wanted Be Well Beautiful Woman to be that same kind of container. Be Well Beautiful Woman was born at that point. And within that body of work, it's a social enterprise that focuses on helping women to lead and live on their own terms by centering healing and liberation through things like day and overnight retreats, a mastermind coaching program where wellness is the forefront, but also some one-on-one support if it's, business or leadership or whatever that might be. A virtual community called Be My Sister's Keeper, a host of the Be Well Beautiful Woman podcast, and then a ton of education and workshops like the virtual summits that I host, along with workshops that don't cost folks a dime, in part because of a relationship that I have with the Stryker Johnson Foundation that provides up to full needs-based scholarships for women in Kalamazoo County for every single service that we provide. And then the free supports, of course, are for anyone, but in part that's made available because of the support from Kalamazoo County. And then on top of that, I have been an entrepreneur for 15 years. I operate a strategic consulting company that focuses on things like business and business strategy and executive coaching, leadership development, evaluation, anti-racism, executive search, the whole gamut. And then my formal training is as a therapist. So I'm a fully licensed therapist, don't see a lot of clinical folks these days, but definitely in part was a drive to be in this wellness space. And then I have a ton of wellness certifications, from, being a yoga teacher to a Reiki master and teacher, trained in breath work and forest bathing and emotional freedom techniques, which is tapping. If it's got a wellness spin, more than likely I have touched it, and it's afforded me an opportunity to heal myself and also the women, and both. I mean, I work with women and men under my consulting practice, but Be Well Beautiful Woman is all about women. So the people that I'm privileged to serve, but I serve myself first through these wellness modalities.
Speaking of that, talk about caring for self. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so caring for self is deeply important to me. I say that healing and liberation by any means necessary, and self-care is a part of that. And what that means for me is an intentionality to carve out space for myself to be, whether that be me getting on my yoga mat or meditating. I usually start my day with meditation or Reiki even before I get out of bed. I spend time in the sauna. I did HIIT today. Yesterday, a couple of days ago, I did HIIT and then yoga. I have a yoga practice a few times a week. I get outside in nature, both walking through my neighborhood and also doing more forest bathing in like natural preserves areas. I read, I invest in my evolution, I create space, I rest, I play, I center pleasure. And so I have a lot of things in my toolbox that helps me to live a balanced life. I was just telling someone last night that I don't live to work, I work to live. And luckily, the kind of work that I do is a part of my purpose and my passion. So a lot of times it doesn't even feel like work. Of course, and not 100% of my work. There's parts of it that I would much rather not be doing, but it comes along, right, with the territory. And it's something that I know for sure that I was born to do, which is why finding our purpose and passion is so important. Passion is the second highest vibrational emotion that exists, right? Because when we're in our passion, we're in our gifting, if you will. I don't start my day typically as an entrepreneur until 10 o'clock. I've even thought about pushing it back more. I try to avoid evenings and weekends to the extent that I can, but that's not always possible because, if I'm traveling for work or if I have some outreach, if I'm speaking at an event, like you take the opportunities as they come. But again, I'm very intentional about those things that I say yes to, no to. And I'm always thinking about my self-care, always. And I won't miss more than a day or two without doing something to invest in myself. That's my barometer. And that's what helps to hold me accountable to keep well-being at the forefront of my life, which helps me to be resilient and more creative and to show up more fully for myself and other people. And allows me to just discover more and more of who I am and to be aligned succinctly with source, universe, God, creator, whatever it is that we name it.
Talk about mental wellness and entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So for me, they really go hand in hand if we're talking about sustainability, right? There are a lot of women that I come in contact with that are doing extraordinary work in their fields and serving the community in really extraordinary ways. And they're not well, right? These women have fibroids. These women have had strokes sometimes. And these are the same people that have a good knowledge base of what it means to be well. We're talking about psychologists. We're talking about, so just because we know something, that doesn't make it an embodied practice, right? Because a lot of times there's dissonance between what we know and what we actually do, how we actually live. For me, if we're talking about what it means to be well, and if we're running constantly, right, and we're particularly socialized around the traditional values of entrepreneurship, the grind culture, and all of these things, I think that there's ease in life. I think that there's balance in life. That's why we have yin and we have yang. That's why we have seasons of harvest where we're working diligently to lay the groundwork so that we can reap the benefits for that next season, whatever that is, right? We're going to have those times of ebb and flow, seasons of tenacious work, and then seasons of rest. But we have to prioritize that. We have to understand the importance of it for living a full life, for saying yes to life right now. And I think so oftentimes, particularly in the entrepreneurial world or people that are highly successful, right, whatever that means within the professional world, the corporate world, the nonprofit world, the belief is that you have to work really hard. And then if you're a woman and if you're a Black woman, right, we get the messaging, and there is truth associated with this, that we have to work extra hard, but we can defy against this ideology that's very much rooted in oppression. We don't have to participate. We can know that this is the truth. And some people may believe this, but we don't have to believe it. Because the minute that we believe it, it becomes an agreement. And that agreement is going to dictate our movement. And if we're moving in ways that are harmful to self, eventually the body is going to reject it. And the body rejects it from lack of sleep. It rejects it through depression, anxiety. It rejects it through being overweight. It rejects it by ultimately, eventually having terminal kinds of illnesses. Because when we don't respond to the body's wisdom to slow down, to move in ways that honors us, to have time and space just to think, to be clear about, is this something we actually want to do in life? We can't even get to our true desires without stillness. Because in part of the programming that we've received since the day that we came into the world, and depending on what your identities are, that's going to be compacted and is going to cause you to do more and more work to uncover. So when I'm working with clients and they say, well, I just can't be still, right? It's a new muscle, right? Like this whole idea of work-life balance, we talk about wanting it, but then the reality of it and what it takes to really do it, if we've been accustomed to being on the grind all the time, we have to condition ourselves to do it, right? And so because the opposite, because everything is work at the end of the day, the question becomes, what work is most worthy for us to live life as fully as possible? And what blows my mind, is the last thing that I want to say, Dr. Richards, is that these are not people that don't have the means. They don't have the vacation. They don't have the money. They don't have, now you don't need all of that to be well. And that's one of the values that I have within Be Well, Beautiful Woman, which is why I focus on indigenous wellness practices that don't cost you a dime, right? You can practice Reiki on yourself. All you have to do is learn how to do Reiki on yourself. You can practice tapping on yourself. All you have to do is learn it. You can go out in the forest and do forest bathing on your own. You can ground your feet in the soil on your own. These things don't cost us a dime. We just have to do it, right? So we can certainly cultivate wellness in these grandiose ways and do it. Like, I'm all for that. But typically when people think about wellness, they're working in a very reactive state versus being proactive to consistently be filling our cup so that we can be well all the time, no matter what life is throwing at us. That's my long answer.
No, that was wonderful. Someone's listening and they're saying, Demarra, what is putting my feet in the dirt going to do, or going to the forest and bathing? Like, when I think of that, it sounds like rainforest and beautiful. But then I'm like, I hope a bug doesn't get on me, right?
Sure. Well, so people who are worried about bugs, get some bug spray, right? Like, that's a real thing. And the reality, but part of what you just offered, Dr. Richards, is a part of our socialization. So if we haven't been immersed in nature, if that's not, which is why I feel so strongly about land access, about us spending time in parks, about us going to natural preserve areas, because the nature alone, and research shows this, that nature has the ability to amplify our body's self-healing mechanism. And just being in nature alone, not doing mindful practice, because the phytochemicals alone is helping, you're being fed and rejuvenated and restored from these phytochemicals. You don't even have to be in a real natural environment. You can be surrounded by fake plants, and it's going to have a similar effect, because the mind doesn't know the difference. Now, of course, you don't get the phytochemicals. You're not getting you're not getting like the benefits of real nature, but the mind is getting the benefit, which benefits the body, right? Because if you can think it, if you can feel it, then you can be it. These are not hokey kinds of things. And, people say, oh, I don't have time for that. Okay, well, like, we all have time. We all have time. The question becomes, how are you spending your time? Are you spending time in ways that are most beneficial to you? Now, there are times when we're obligated and we have to do things, but do we have to do every single thing on our to-do list? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So one of the things that I work with clients on is taking stock of their lives, because everything that is within our world, we are literally manifesting that. And the question becomes, are the things that you're doing moving you closer towards who you want to be, moving you closer towards joy and peace, moving closer towards well-being, or is it moving you further away? And at the end of the day, we can only decide. Nobody is going to come out and magically do this for us. Like, it doesn't work that way. People don't see our value. We make people see our value. right? And they are not the defining factor for the value that we have. Whether you see my value or not, I'm valuable. Right? That's life's work, to be at a point in life where we're operating at such a high level that what goes on the outside has very little effect on what happens on the inside. But we can't get to that space if we're not taking time to invest in our wellness in whatever shape that comes, because there are endless possibilities for us to do that.
You talked about finding your passion and your purpose, and a lot of us are not walking in our passion and purpose. What was that aha moment for you when you knew you were walking in not only what's passionate for you, but purpose? And also, how did you get to that point?
Yeah, I love this question because my life has definitely been like a winding road, right? And what I know to be true is that I just trusted the pathway. And when a door opened, the most important work that we will ever do is to learn how to trust ourselves. And we can't trust ourselves again if we're not creating space to cultivate that higher level of consciousness that can only come about through internal work. Now, external, we can read books, bibliotherapy, and all of these things exist to our advantage, but nothing is going to help to move us further along than the internal work. It expedites things for us, essentially. The reason why this is important is because when I think about my life, I didn't set out to do anything. I'm going to be really clear. I didn't set out to do one thing. In fact, when I graduated from getting my undergraduate degree, I said, I will never go to school again. I am over it. No, thank you. I was working for a nonprofit organization at the time, doing meaningful work. I started off in the AmeriCorps program, that I just kind of trampled upon that. But even before that, when I was 17, I got a job working for a charter school. I was 17, 18 by my first day of work. That laid the groundwork for something that was birthed years later, right? Like my joy for working with young people. And then when I became a therapist, when I said I wasn't going to go back to school, and then I got an inkling, I was like, no, like, I think I actually want to become a therapist. And that was driven in part from my lived experience of having complex trauma. Not really understanding then that part of my work was to do my work. I was thinking, like many people do, is that that's the past. The past can just be left behind. Check school check, husband check, daughter check, home ownership check, entrepreneurship check. But, and that's another reason why I feel so passionate about the work of healing and liberation, because many of us are walking around with deep wounds that could be really powerful for our transformation if only we were to look at it. Right. I just wrote my first book called Me Too, A Therapist's Journey to Heal from Complex Trauma, Find Liberation and Joy, which helps people to understand complex trauma as a whole, but more specifically, how does it show up in children? And more specifically, what is the aftermath of what that might look like? And then what is the journey to come out of that, right? To find yourself again, to integrate back into your agency, to find your power again, to find your purpose. What I'm really grateful for is that, and I believe that my faith orientation, growing up with a faith orientation, I believe helped me to know when God, universe, source, creator was speaking to me. And then when a door would open, I walked through it. If I wanted to do something, like when I decided that I wanted to be a consultant, I was like, ooh, I'm really intrigued by the field of consulting. I was a manager at Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services. On the management team, we'd have consultants come in, and I was like, oh, I feel like I could do this. So I just started researching everything about the field of consulting. And then I found these consulting pools, and I got vetted into these pools miraculously. And my first job was in Portland, Oregon, miraculously. And then for a year I worked, and I had my consulting practice on the side, and I used my vacation time to do consulting work. And then I saved every single penny that I made so that when I left my job, I had a cushion to carry me. And then from that work, I met someone I was doing. I have countless stories, Dr. Richards, about like just trust walking as the pathway is unfolding and having the courage, having the tenacity by which to explore and do a deep dive to understand what it is that you want to walk into, and having the courage to do it in spite of the fact that you have no background in it whatsoever, because that's what's calling you, and trusting that source, universe, God is going to bring you everything that you need on the pathway as you go along. And understanding that people are number one pathway for prosperity. So whenever we want to do something in life, the minute that we decide, I told a girlfriend this recently. I said, I have to be careful about what I say I want, because the minute I decide I want it, God starts to show up everywhere to get me there, even if it's not good for me, right? Like, even if it's not going to be good. And so we have to be really mindful about our power to co-create the things that we want, which our purpose is very much in alignment with that. So the last thing I want to say is that one of the ways that people find their purpose is first thinking about, when you were in your most uninhibited state as a child, before you started to become conditioned by your family, by the world, who were you? Who did you want to be? What were you intrigued by? If you had a magic wand and you could do anything, you could be anything. So it really starts in that space of visioning so that we can start to curate a really expansive and give ourselves the permission to have an expansive vision for our lives, in spite of the narratives that we have taken on, which have become agreements, which has deterred us from finding our purpose to begin with. The four agreements say that we don't, once we become domesticated, we domesticate ourselves. Liberation work is undomesticating work. So if we want to find our true essence and live an authentic life, it requires us to peel back so many layers. And it's a hard journey, and I don't want to minimize that, but it is the most worthwhile journey we will ever embark upon, because it is the reservoir that creates flow. So for 15 years, I've never had to even market my consulting business. Never. That's flow. Now, I don't say that because I feel like I'm special. We're all special, and none of us is special at the same time. I say that because it's simply facts, right? But part of that is about operating within this understanding of what does it mean to curate abundance for your life? Well, you got to believe that you're worthy of having this purpose. You got to believe that you're going to have the support necessary to execute that purpose. You have to believe that there's endless possibilities for what you can make, right, across your lifetime, and you're worthy of living a full life, an aligned life. And then we've got to have the courage to ask for what we want, and then do the work. Then we have to do the actual work to make it happen. And then we have to wait, because at the end of the day, we can't always control the timeline, right? There's certain parts of because we're co-creating. We don't control everything in the co-creation process, but there are many things that we do control to really lean in and understand that purpose. And understand that purpose is very much connected to our coin, as my grandmother used to say. Our money is connected with our authentic identity, and we can live well in purpose.
I want you to have a monologue. I want you to name this person, living or not, and they've impacted your life so much. Who is that person, and what are you saying to that person?
Yeah, for me, that's unequivocally Dr. Maya Angelou. I actually have a painting of her in my office, and Dr. Maya, I just thank you for the expansive work that you have done, how your words have touched my life, how they have expanded me, how they've inspired me to be the best version of myself. Your story is just extraordinary, the things that you've overcome. And it's helped me through the things that I've read, and seeing you in action, hearing you speak. The regal nature of who you are it just feeds me. Every time I have the gift of being in your presence, I feel like you are my mother, and I'm grateful. And even though we never got a chance to meet when you were here, know that your life's work, more than any body of work that exists on this planet, maybe outside of manifestation, but I feel like your work is also very much connected to co-creation, to manifesting expansive things, from turning really deeply painful circumstances into something beautiful. And so thank you for gifting yourself with me, with the entire world. And I'm so grateful that your legacy lives on. And it makes me smile every time I walk in my office and I see your picture, this painting that I had commissioned. It just your presence makes me feel like anything is also possible for my life. Wow, that was good, Dr. Richards.
That was awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that was beautiful. There are so many brands and businesses that are dominating. Talk about a brand or a business that's dominating that you admire and why.
Oh my gosh. So I would say definitely the wellness industry. It is a $17 trillion projected industry. It is growing. We are spending more and more time talking about mental wellness and using indigenous wellness practices, and more people of color are stepping into that space, even though we've always been here, but we're being recognized more and more. For me, that space, not just because it's a lucrative space to be in and can be, right? Because money has never been a driver for me. I live well and I'm very grateful that I do. It's the least important thing for me. And that's also one of the abundance principles, that you can't be driven by money, right? And you have to understand that, like, money is just a source. Source is the source. Money is not the source. It's also about, like, what is possible for people as they cultivate their well-being. As you cultivate your well-being, you can take someone who grew up with immense poverty and they can live a life of immense wealth. When you're centering your healing and liberation, you get to align with your authentic self. When you're centering your healing and liberation, you're able to identify what your purpose is. You're able to utilize your voice in a way that influences people. You're able to live a life of ease and live well. You're able to love fully and receive love fully. So for me, wellness is everything. And you can be successful when it comes to a business, and you can make good money, and I was talking to somebody recently and I'm like, why haven't you lived your life more fully? Because you have every means, every mechanism in place for you to do that, right? Well, I've been working. Nobody has to work that much. Nobody has to work that much, right? And so this is a choice, but we believe that we don't have the choice. We believe this is what we have to do in order to have this kind of success. And it's a fallacy. And for me, like, what is the point in making good money if you can't live well, if you can't enjoy it? What is the point? Wellness for me is the foundation by which you live well, and that you consistently evolve on your journey, because evolution is something that should always be happening for us. And if we're stagnating, that's fine. There's no judgment about that. But there is more of us to be discovered always. One of my mottos is there's more. There's always more. There's always more for us to discover about self. There's always more for us to heal from. There's always more for us to do. There's always more for us to be. There's always more for us to make. There's always more. And it really infringes upon us to decide the extent to which we're going to invest in our wellness so that we can live well while we're here, and not wait for the aftermath, if that's what we believe in, if we believe in an afterlife. Because we can live well and have utopian and joy here. We can do that right now. We don't have to wait. And God, universe, source wants that. So this idea of suffering, for me, I feel like the wellness space counters this conditioning that we have around suffering, and that suffering is a part of the human condition. No, it's not. No, it's not. Are there times when we're going to experience pain? Absolutely. We lose somebody that we love. Yes, we're going to experience immense pain from that loss. But the goal is to do the wellness work, do the grieving work necessary to get back to that higher level as quickly as possible so that you can get on with the business of living while also honoring the life of this person that meant so much to us, right? Wellness for me, Dr. Richards, it's everything. It's not an add on, it's not something we do once in a while. It is embodiment. It's everything to me. And, which is why I do the work that I do, and is why I center this in everything that I do. And I walk the talk, not from a perfection standpoint, from a practice standpoint. Perfection is not about, practice isn't about perfection. Practice is just about showing up and 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 watching the magic unfold as we show up for self in whatever way we're doing that.
What is the best advice you were ever given?
I love this question. Gosh, there's so much. I would say that the best insight the thing that was most pivotal for me, particularly at the front of starting this work with Be Well, Beautiful Woman, and, prior to that, Black Woman About Business, I was reading Pam Grout's book, E Squared or E Cubed. Yeah, E Squared, because E Cubed is the follow-up. And it blew my mind about my ability to co-create. I never saw myself as powerful in that way. That was the ultimate power for me. And so that was the best advice that I ever got, because that started me on a journey of understanding everything that I could about manifestation and the co-creation process. And a lot of wild things happened after that. And I gratefully, because when I'm inspired by something, I share it with the world, right? I feel like that's a part of what we're charged to do, right? We cultivate light to share light with others. And so many people that I heard from, how that book changed their lives, right? So it's beautiful. I know what it did for me, but to know what it also did for other people. So yeah, that process of co-creation, that was a game changer for me.
Who are your top 2 influencers or mentors, and what lessons do they teach you?
Definitely Oprah for me, because Oprah embodies, and much like Dr. Maya, her lived experience and getting to the place where she's at in her life, and the co-creation process, and how she has continued to center that and been an inspiration for so many people to live well, to be well. And she's done so much good in the world. She continues to certainly be a point of inspiration for me. And I would say Toni Morrison and Entasaki Sanjay. I know you only said 2.
That's okay.
Entasaki Sanjay's books, they just fed me these fictional stories that felt so real for my own life. And I love the dialect by which she had the courage to write in a dialect that really honored this dialect that was an important dialect to bring to the surface, and this beautiful story weaving. So definitely her. And then Toni Morrison, because Toni was just profound. She was a prolific writer, and she lived her life very boldly. But there are so many people, right? As I'm talking to you right now, I'm like, oh, I can think of 5 other people, but I can't do that right now. And so I've already given you 3. But those are a couple people for me that definitely resonate with me.
Advice you wish you had followed?
As a teenager, in part because of my lived experience with complex trauma, there were times when I put myself in situations where I experienced great harm. And although the people who harmed me, they're responsible, I'm also responsible because I didn't listen to that voice, right? Our intuition, whatever we call it, when God is speaking to us to try to protect us. And that is one thing that I wish I would have known then to trust myself, because there are certain things that I know that I would not have endured if it hadn't have been for me not listening. And although I've come out, at the end of that and will continue to be healing, over the course of my life, I think that the body knows, and the body knows because God knows, right? And so that's one of the things that I wish that I would have known that much earlier in my life.
The word is play. How did you play, or how will you play today?
Oh, I love play. Well, I'm getting a massage later. So even though that's not play, it will feel very good to my body. I'm not sure. I love this. There's a concert downtown. We have a festival going on. Maybe I'll meet a friend for dinner and drinks. So I'm going to get into something because I love this. I feel like this is a call to action. I actually wasn't planning on doing any of that except for my massage and work today. I already, I worked out and I did some wellness stuff earlier, but I'm going to do something fun today. That's how I'm going to play.
Who's your ideal client?
My ideal client is someone who is ready to do the work to transform. We can talk about wanting change, but I learned very early on in my career as a therapist that, according to the stages of change, that just because people talk about change, it doesn't mean that they're actually ready for change, right? And there is a difference. Like how we show up in a space ready to change is very different than a space of contemplating change. My ideal client is someone that is so over wherever they're at in their life that they're willing to anchor in, to hear and see all the ways that they're being supported towards what it is that they want to accomplish. I tell my daughter often, play in life, but don't play with your life. And I want people that are ready to not play with their life and be ready to play in life so that they can enjoy it as fully as possible. And of course, there are obvious things like women, and like if we're talking about Be Well, Beautiful Woman. But again, in my strategy space, I work with men and women in that space. So, and non-binary folks as well.
Talk about motherhood and entrepreneurship.
So first and foremost, I love being a mother. Being a mom for me has been one of the greatest gifts. It's been sacred to me. I have learned so much about myself through my daughter. My daughter has been one of my most significant teachers, hands down. And, the reality is that as a mother, we carry a lot. I just watched Barbie with her yesterday, and there's this monologue where America Ferrera is saying, do this. If you're a woman, you can do this, but don't do that. You can, you have to talk about loving being a mother, but don't talk about your kids too much. Like all of these kinds of things, right? And at the end of the day, no matter how good you do, you're still going to be blamed for like all kinds of things. And so, with parenting, even though my ex-husband is a phenomenal father in a myriad of ways, there were a lot of things that I carried on my own. And this is another reason why I'm so passionate about work with women, from scheduling every single doctor's appointment to being at every single doctor's appointment, to being at everything, making sure that my daughter had everything that she needed while also caring for myself, while also being in graduate school, right? When I launched my business, I had just started graduate school. I was given a Thurgood Marshall Fellowship. So I had responsibilities with my fellowship. I had my consulting practice. And then I, started Kalamazoo CDF Freedom Schools on top of that. So I had multiple things and my baby. And so when I was in graduate school, she was 3. And the reality is that there were many things that I didn't miss. But as an entrepreneur and in pursuing things that I knew that I was called to do, there were things that I missed in her life. I couldn't be there for every single thing that I would have wanted to, but I prioritized her. She was my priority in the midst of all the other priorities that I had. And there were times that was not easy. I was very overweight during that time. I didn't sleep very, I wasn't a great sleeper. I would sleep until noon some days. I would grind all night and work. I didn't really have the only concept I had of what it meant to be well was to go on vacation, to go out to dinner every now and again with a girlfriend. Like I didn't really have that concept outside of my clinical training, of course, right? Which goes well beyond when we're talking about wellness, that's well beyond having clinical training. So there were sacrifices, right? There were sacrifices. And I believe that my daughter learned a lot about what it means to be a strong woman in the midst of the cultivation. And particularly as I've done more of my healing work and become more vulnerable, right? Because that's a part of being strong too. The ability to be vulnerable and to lean in and to say what you think and to say what you feel and to ask for what you need. And like all of those things can be risky if that's not how we've been socialized, right? And particularly when we've been socialized to care, right? You care for people to the, to the exhaustion of self. And particularly if you're a Black woman, right? And so in terms of balancing that world, the last thing I'll say is that you can't tend to everything 100% of the time. And so I had to tend to things as things came up. What were the things that were most pressing? And so even now she's 18 and, like I'm getting used to her being an adult now. And I want to spend time with her. And so she's still my priority. Yesterday, even though I had project work to do, she's like, Mom, I want to go to the movies today on a whim, because this is how she is. And I'm like, I want to hang out with my kid today. So I'm going to drop what I'm doing. This project stuff, it can wait. And so we spent a couple hours today and she went on and hung out with her friends for the rest of the day. And so that balancing act is probably going to be always present. Because even though she's 18, she's always going to be my baby. I'm always going to want to show up for her. I'm always going to want to spend time with her. She's always going to be my priority in some shape or form. And so if I had a meeting yesterday, would I have canceled it to go to the movies with her? No. And she knows that. But I'm like, I can do this. I make my own schedule. I can do this. And I want to do this because I really prize the time that we have together.
If you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
Yeah. Something that I ask a lot when I'm working with people is, what are they currently working to liberate from in their lives? And so I would say for me, it's really about aligning succinctly with the vision that I have around relationships and aligned relationships, and ensuring that my actions are congruent with the vision that I have. Like knowing that I'm very clear about what I want, very clear, and remembering that having that clarity in the pursuit of making decisions that create the right boundaries so that I'm bringing that into my life. Yeah, that's something that is definitely at the forefront for me, relationship stuff, both, more intimate in the dating world, right? But also with family and friends and, colleagues, relationships across the board. That's definitely a theme for me right now.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Rapid Round of Fun. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I want you to give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the rapid round of fun?
Let's do it.
What is your favorite comfort food?
Italian, hands down.
The last movie you saw?
Barbie.
You relax doing what?
Massages, saunas, yoga, watching some mindless comedy. Schitt's Creek right now is in rotation for me. Dinner with friends, music, like all kinds of things that help me to unwind.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
I saw Kendrick Lamar once at the Essence Music Festival, and I was in love. He's definitely top of mind for me right now.
Your favorite dance song?
I really like A Little Party Never Killed Nobody by Fergie.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Fresh pressed juice. I have it every single day.
Your ideal car?
Right now, it's a Range Rover.
Work out or hit the couch?
Both. So today it was hit, but later on, I'm probably going to hit that couch.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Demarra West, thank you so much for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast again. Before we let you go, share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you. Leave all your social media handles, and don't forget to let us know how they can pick up your book.
Absolutely. Dr. Richards, thank you. I really, really enjoyed my time with you and had some very pivotal emotional moments, which I'm grateful for. And so thank you for inviting me in. And I appreciate myself for allowing myself to go there, right? And model that. So yeah, folks can stay in touch with us and be connected to our work through our website, bewellbeautifulwoman.com. That's bewellbeautifulwoman.com. They can sign up for our e-news. That's the best way to know in real time what we've got going on. All things Be Well Beautiful Woman. In addition to that, we do have an Instagram page that we're pretty active on. That's just the letter B, Well Beautiful. So instead of BE, it's just the letter B, Well Beautiful. And then we are active on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. So those are the main ways that people can get in touch with us. And then in terms of the book should be released in the fall, and people will be able to get that, of course, on the website. I'll be making announcements in the e-news, and there's going to be some other things that are unfolding, a book tour and some things like that as I get this body of work out into the world.
Thank you, Demarra. That's a wrap.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.